Welcome to Friday video. It's late this week. It's been a busy day, and I was thinking I wasn't going to get around to doing this one, so I'll make it a very quick one today. And the subject of this video is gratitude, and here's where gratitude comes into all this pro audio stuff. If you're one of these young whippersnappers who think all this gear is expensive, then let me tell you about a few expenses that you know nothing about and you don't even have to do this year. Apart from everything coming down in price, I mean, when I was growing up in the the 80s and 90s, things like that, a nice microphone back then was, if you couldn't afford a Neumann or something like that, you would afford probably an AKG 414, and from memory they were like $800 back then, which is probably like $1,600 now. There was really nothing else. So all of that is pretty well known. But here's a couple of other expenses that you don't have today that us old geezers used to have back in the day. Do you know what a patch bay is? Well, you used to have a bunch of patch bays in your studio, and basically the idea behind a patch bay is that instead of routing, going to the back of your patch bay and your rack and things like that, and patching everything down, you could patch everything to a common patch bay. And there are things like half normal patch bays and normal patch bays, so that if there was nothing plugged in the front, all of those outputs would go right into the input. So all of your modules and things like that would come into the top of the patch bay, and then the bottom part of the patch bay would go out to your mixer. So therefore, if you had nothing plugged into the front, then everything would be normaled through to so that those sound sources would go into your mixer. And then if you wanted to patch something around, then you could patch from around the front. There were 1/4-inch patch bays, there were TT patch bays, tiny telephone patch bays. There was a bunch of those. But patch bays weren't that expensive. But cabling, I can't tell you how many times I would do budgets for studios, and people would just completely forget about cabling. And so they blow all their budget, and then we'd say, well, okay, we've got to get all the cables. And when you realize how much money and how much copper you would have to buy, there was a lot of stuff. To finish that studio, there was still a lot of stuff to be done, a lot of expenses to be made. Do you have any patch bays today? Or maybe if you have Reason, you hit the tab and the patch bay goes around the back and you can plug things in. But of course, it's all virtual. There's no cables to buy, and you can memorize and all that kind of stuff. What about Mixdown decks? When the last time you had to buy a Mixdown deck? Back in the day, they were 1/4-inch reel-to-reels. Then there were DAT players, and even there was if you wanted to do it on the cheap, hi-fi VCRs, VHS decks back in the day were a good way to be able to mix down tracks. But I'm just trying to think how much some of those Sony or Panasonic DATs were back in the days. Probably, $1,500 back then, which is like $3,000 now. So when you think about it, you couldn't finish your project until you mixed it down, and you need to have a mixed down deck. So there's a ton more that I'm not even talking about. But another one is all the racks, all of these synth racks you need to have. All that's built into your DAW now. So when you think about that, your sound sources, your patch bays, and all that cabling, and a mixdown deck, they're just a few of those things you don't even have right now, because it all happens in your computer. So the word of the day is gratitude, right? Be grateful for what we've had, and for what we have right now. And I've always kind of found that growing up, when we used to have the actual physical parts of the studio and we'd have to wire it all together, it really helps me understand signal flow more than maybe some younger guys who have never actually had to do this in the physical world. Anyway, that's my little 2 cents worth. Why don't you put in down the comments of the stuff that you used to have? You used to have some DAT recorders, or maybe some hi-fi VCRs, how you used to mix down, whether you used to have elaborate patch bays and things like that. And we'll see you next week. Thanks so much. for your patience for me getting this one out, and have a great rest of your weekend. Ciao for now. Bye-bye.